Hello everybody. Next up we're on the road again to the North London Stadium that is amusingly shaped like a toilet bowl, where our host will be Tottenham Hotspur. Kick-off is 4:30pm on Sunday and it's on Sky. Or if you prefer, some of the drooling idiots who run this site will be doing the Eyes Up Mother Brown thing, should you be interested. Probably wisest to skip lunch before tuning into that one. Spurs, as I believe their supporters call them, currently lie in 6th spot with 2 away wins, 5-2 at Southampton and 6-1 at Manchester United, and a home draw, 1-1 against the Magpies, and a home defeat, 1-0 to Everton. The victory last weekend over Man United gave a perfect example of the worst of VAR and, well, why it doesn't work properly. The sending off of Martial resulted from his retaliating to a girly slap from Lamela, in kind. Lamela's reaction was laughable. Even Spurs fans who, by definition, struggle with the concept of shame, were embarrassed at his collapse. Technically speaking, Martial's dismissal was correct, but it would also have been correct to have dismissed Lamela for his initial, well, assault isn't really the word, but you know what I mean. We know VAR looked at it, we know they saw it, but why no action was taken, well, nobody knows. What is the point of VAR if officials can simply ignore it on a whim? Answers on a postcard to somewhere else, please. Elsewhere, they've qualified for the group stages of the Thursday Night League by beating the finest at Bulgaria and North Macedonia, whose team name looks like a radio direction for the sound effect of somebody clearing their chest, and Israel could throw at them. The group stages hardly look more testing, and even they will have to go some not to escape a group where the most testing fixtures will involve Royal Antwerp. One odd thing you will notice is their current kit. Specifically, they've adopted those Nike shirts which, for some unknown reason, have a V-neck at the back of the shirt as well as the front. Must confuse the hell out of Harry Kane when he gets changed. Daisy, the socially distanced personal assistant with a beautiful smile, informed me that, although they brought in 4 first-teamers on permanent deals, it is one of the loan signings that has got their supporters in a tizzy. The return of Gareth Bale was on the cards, particularly since Real Madrid had realised just how much it was costing them to effectively pay for his golf lessons. The Simian has returned to Blighty in possession of an iffy knee, probably obtained due to a defective swing. They were hopeful he might have recovered in time for this one. If available, I suspect he might be on the bench. Meanwhile, let's all have a laugh at the fact he once managed to register his goal celebration at the property office. As we're doing all the loans first, they also brought in a player called Carlos Vinicius on a season-long deal from Benfica, with a loan fee of €3 million going the other direction. The 25-year-old Brazilian striker hasn't troubled the statisticians yet this season, and has possibly been brought in with one eye on the Thursday nights. On the permanent side of things, they added to their goalkeeping resources with the free transfer arrival of Joe Hart. Sad to see him fall so far, really. His appearances too have been limited to Thursdays so far. They spent a few more bob at the Bernabeu. In addition to the reported $12 million loan fee for Bale, they also sent over a further $25 million to bring in Sergio Reguilon. The 23-year-old left-back made his full Spanish debut a few days before making the switch over to North London, having been on the books at Real Madrid since the age of 15. They also spent money domestically. An initial £15 million going to Southampton in return for Danish midfielder Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. Højbjerg was coming to the end of his contract at St Mary's, hence the Saints cashing in on the player, whose fees appears to have been paid in part by the $12 million valuation appended to Kyle Walker-Peters, though that gap will widen if certain add-ons become payable for Højbjerg. Matt Doherty was the other player to arrive without troubling the international arrivals terminal. This seems a strange transfer, to be honest. A veteran of over 300 games for Wolves, the Molineux outfit clearly wanted something a little more of an upgrade in the right-back department, so are probably only too happy to take the £13.4 million on offer for the player, who accidentally found himself playing centre-back for Ireland in the 0-0 snooze fest against Wales last week, after half the Irish side had come over all COVID. Well, that's all the new Tottenham signings. Let's move on, shall we, to the wild and wacky world of association football. Lots happening over the last couple of weeks. Some clubs, Liverpool and Man United, came up with yet another blueprint to make some clubs, Liverpool and Man United, richer. Rather sickeningly, Project Big Picture, as this piece of humbug is known, was dressed up as a way of distributing some sort of bailout to the lower leagues during the current shutdown of grounds. Whether or not a bailout from Premier League downwards is actually a good thing is a matter for debate. However, dangling a load of money in front of the EFL, then attaching strings that will serve only your own ends, is a bit much even by the standards of some clubs, Liverpool and Man United, who have a long history of this sort of thing. Oh, just to add to the mix, they anticipated giving the 9 longest-serving Premier League clubs a special voting right, so that in the end, if somebody outside that little group starts to threaten their cosy existence, that can be dealt with. Even though, as things stand, we would fall within that group of 9, it sticks to high heaven. The fact that EFL chairman Rick Parry seemed willing to sell his league down the river becomes more understandable when you remember that amongst his previous jobs was that of chief executive of some club on Merseyside that play in red. Even the Premier League itself balked at the brazenness of it all, going on record to express disappointment at Parry's comments. In the end, the clubs, including bizarrely Liverpool and Man United who came up with the plan in the first place, rejected the plan. This means that some clubs, Liverpool and Man United, will need to find another way of having a longer closed season, especially extended for the purpose of playing lucrative friendlies in the Far East, whilst no doubt still complaining at their players' workload every time an international break comes up. There again, some clubs, Liverpool and Man United, should beware. Many more results like last week's humiliations at Villa Park and Old Trafford might see them on the wrong side of that divide, and they leave the grass to grow even longer in the Championship. The other news is that, given there seems to be little prospect of supporters being allowed back any day soon, those games not already being shown on the box will be made available. At a price. So, in the unlikely event of one of their tame broadcasters not selecting them for broadcast, the North West's Red Mafia will at least be able to sit there counting up all the £14.95s. On the international front, England's 2-1 victory over world-ranked number 1 side Belgium was, as is the media's wont, being lauded as some sort of major statement, which blithely ignored the fact that it owed much to an iffy penalty that had Liverpool written all over it, and a deflection best described as wicked. There was a bit of reality check in the 1-0 defeat by Denmark, which involved a refereeing performance so bad I was amazed to discover that the officials weren't actually English. The post-match interviews were interesting. Declan Rice came out and gave a nice mature summary, but I was somewhat confused by the arrival of Harry Kane on the screen. Not because he had anything interesting to say, well, who can tell, but for the fact that between the final whistle and the interview he'd made the effort to go back to the changing room and put his wristwatch on. I can only speculate on the thought process behind that one. Oh, I must put my watch on if I'm going to be on the telly. It's not even if it was some sort of endorsement deal. I mean, you couldn't tell if it was a Rolex or a Christmas cracker job. OK, let's move on to us. Firstly, Leicester away. Remember that? Superb, marvellous, splendid. 3 good goals. Well, OK, Cresswell's assist was a hopeful punt, but Fornell's touch to bring it under control was sublime. Leicester were quite simply out-Leicestered. And the beauty of them having a goal disallowed because Vardy's backside was offside was one of the funniest applications of VAR I've ever seen. The new boy Kufo did particularly well, given that the ink hadn't dried in his entry permit before he was putting his boots on. Kufal apart, the window itself was a little bit uninspiring, which I guess was pretty much as we expected. We wish Josh Cullen all the best at Anderlecht, and Wilshere all the best at wherever he ends up. Spare a thought, though, for the army of physios now twiddling their thumbs with next to nothing to do. We also bid farewell to Anderson, at least temporarily. During a couple of League Cup matches this season, he did show decent attitude, but given the system we've alighted on in the league, he was always going to be a peripheral player at best this season, so here at Porto is probably best for both player and club. We also welcomed Craig Dawson on loan for a season from Watford. He has presumably arrived as cover for the current central defensive setup. And I mean this in the nicest possible way. One hopes these services aren't required too often while he is here. At the time of writing, we're currently said to be in the advanced stages of signing Said Benrahma. Fine player, no doubt, and should his signing have been completed by the time you read this, we bid him welcome. However, I'm sure that in that infamous interview, whenever Jim White paused enough from telling David Sullivan just how great he is, Sullivan was excusing the sale of Dengana on the grounds that we had far too many wingers. Well, I'm confused. On the injury front, the news is that, as well as Mr. Moyes, Diop will be allowed to break the tape across his front door, having served his COVID quarantine. Fredericks was slated to be available, though he'll have to go some to dislodge Kufal on the Leicester performance. Arthur Masuaku did withdraw from the Democratic Republic of Congo squad in midweek with a knee twinge. However, the withdrawal was said to be precautionary and he should be available for selection. So, on to the prediction. Well, bless them, they do have an occasional habit of raising their game against us. But it should be pointed out that their wins so far have come against the distinctly average Southampton and an even more mediocre Man United, who had the disadvantage, for possibly the first time ever, of being on the end of a rubbish refereeing decision on their own patch. For our part, the international break did us no favours. Just as we were on a roll, on went the breaks. Still, at least none of the players who went away seem to have come back with injuries, which is always a bonus. My feeling is that this will be an entertaining afternoon's entertainment. That will remain honours even at the end. I've gone for a 2-2 draw on a number of occasions this season without success, but on the grounds that I have to be right one day, I'll go for it once more. So, Mr. Winston, please take the £2.50 that I would have spent on a sympathy card for Harry Maguire and wager it accordingly. Enjoy the game.